This is the story of Hansel and Gretel. There once was a woodcutter who lived with his children at the edge of the forest. He had a son called Hansel and a daughter named Gretel. The children's mother had died when they were small, and their father had married again, and they had a stepmother. The family was very, very poor. Although the woodcutter worked as hard as he could, he did not earn much money, and the whole family often went to bed hungry. The children's stepmother was not at all fond of Hansel and Gretel. She hated having to make that little food that there was go around for 4 people. And often she suggested sending the children away, but as their father loved them, they would always refuse. However, one winter, when the family had even less food than usual, the stepmother persuaded her husband to take the children with them deep into the forest. She planned that once they were there, she and their father would pretend to go and look for firewood, but in fact they would go home, leaving the children in the forest. Reluctantly, the children's father agreed. The children, upstairs in bed, had not been able to go to sleep because they were so hungry. They overheard their father and stepmother talking, and Gretel began to cry. "Don't worry, little sister," said Hansel. "I will look after you." And when his father and stepmother had gone to bed, he slipped outside and saw some pebbles shining white in the moonlight. Quickly, he filled his pockets with these and crept back to bed. The next morning, their father told Hansel and Gretel that they were all going to the forest to collect firewood and perhaps find some nuts for their supper. They set off together into the forest, and as his father led them down first one path and then another, Hansel lagged behind and dropped pebbles from his pocket to mark the paths they walked along. When they reached a part of the forest so far from home that neither Hansel nor Gretel had ever been there before, the stepmother suggested the children should wait by a tree while he and their father went a little further. Hansel and Gretel were exhausted by the long walk and sat down thankfully, and in no time they were fast asleep. When they awoke, they found the grown-ups had not returned. Gretel cried because she was frightened, but he told her how he had dropped pebbles on the path that had come down, and how when the moon rose, his pebbles would gleam in the moonlight and show them the way home. It was just as he said, and as the moon shone through the trees, Hansel and Gretel were able to retrace their steps through the forest. It was nearly dawn when they reached their home. Their father was delighted to see his children again and gave them both a big hug. But the stepmother pretended to be cross with them for getting lost. But secretly she was furious that her plan to get rid of the children had failed. As the days went on, there was even less food to eat. Once more, the stepmother persuaded her husband to take the children into the forest and leave them there. "Perhaps they'll die," she said, "but at least we won't have to worry about food for them." Hansel again overheard this plan, and this time he was unable to get out and pick up pebbles as the door was locked and barred. So instead, at breakfast the next morning, he hid his crust of bread in his pocket. As the woodcutter and his family set off into the forest, Hansel lingered behind as before and dropped crumbs where the paths divided. He planned to use them, just like the pebbles, to find the way home. Later, the children were left to wait by the tree, but their father and stepmother never returned for them. Hansel again comforted Gretel. "We'll find our way by following the breadcrumbs I've dropped," he told her. And once more, they set out hand in hand, sure that they would be home by morning. But this time they could not find any of Hansel's markers. It was a cold winter, and the birds were hungry too, and they had flown down to eat the crumbs that Hansel had dropped. Soon the children realized that they were hopelessly lost in the depths of the forest, and they both felt very unhappy. They wandered for 2 days, hungry and frightened. And then they came to a clearing, and there before them stood a pretty little house. They went closer and saw that the walls were made of gingerbread, the roof of fruit cake, and the shining windows of barley sugar. Quickly, the children broke bits off the house and pushed the food into their mouths. They noticed that the whole cottage was made of delicious things to eat. "Hello, my pretty children," said a voice behind them. "I see I have visitors. Won't you come in and join me for supper?" The children did not know that a witch was speaking to them, as they had come under her spell when they started to eat the little house. Then she showed to them some little white beds, and soon Hansel and Gretel were asleep. Now during the night, the wicked witch took Hansel while he was asleep and locked him in a cage. And in the morning, Gretel found a hard crust waiting for her for breakfast, and much heavy work to be done. The witch planned to fatten up Hansel, then eat him. Poor Gretel had to work harder and harder with very little to eat. Each day the witch would pinch Hansel to see if he was plump enough to make a good meal. She was very short-sighted though, and so when Hansel pushed a chicken bone without any meat on it towards her instead of his finger, the witch did not notice. Hansel grew fatter and fatter, but he managed to pass some food to Gretel, who was treated very cruelly by the witch. Both children longed to escape, but Gretel promised never to run away without her brother. One day, the witch grew impatient. She decided she could wait no longer. She would kill Hansel that very day and cook him in her big oven. "Light the fire under the oven, girl," she ordered. "Heap up the wood and make the oven really hot." The witch rubbed her hands together. "Test the heat now," she cackled, meaning to roast Gretel first. But the little girl was clever. "Please show me what to do. Does my head go in first?" "Stupid," said the witch. "You put your head inside like this." And at once, Gretel gave her a big push, and the witch went into the oven. Gretel slammed the oven door shut, and that was the end of the witch. Now quickly, Gretel found the witch's keys and unlocked the cage to let Hansel out. Then they filled their pockets with gold and silver and precious stones, and taking some food as well for the journey, they set off to find their way home. After wandering for some time, they found themselves on a path they knew. Following this, they soon found that they were near their home, and they ran to the house and burst through the door, and there they found their father sitting sadly, all alone. Their stepmother had died, He was so pleased to see his children again, and they danced around with joy. "I will never be so unkind again," he said. "We'll share everything, even a crust." Then the children emptied their pockets. Their father stared in amazement at the riches they had returned with. Now they had plenty of money and would never go hungry again. On a winter's evening, the woodcutter loved to sit by the fire and listen to Hansel and Gretel as they told him the story of how they outwitted the wicked witch. And so the three of them lived happily together in the forest for many years.